Hello, today we are asking ourselves how we can empower parents to be involved in key decisions in school. So what are the opportunities that currently exist for parental involvement? How can we commit to a culture of listening? And how can we commit to a culture of co-production when it comes to working with parents? So first of all, the various opportunities. We've talked about Parentkind before. They have a lot of helpful resources on their website. Um, Obviously, you've got the roles of parent governor or parent trustee. You may also have a parent teacher organisation that does the range of things that are something around here, fundraising, etc., holding events. Parent volunteers might sort of come in to be part of some of those events. Now, some that are less common perhaps are the parent council. Now, they don't necessarily have a rigid format, but it's a kind of general meeting. If you have a student council, it's a similar vibe, different from the PTA in that it has more of a role to bring the representative parent voice to head teacher and the governors. Parent representatives may be acting on behalf of the collective voice for specific issues, and parent action groups again may be working around specific issues. It's quite common then to have a parent governor or a PTA, but perhaps less common to have a parent council, and perhaps that's an opportunity to split those two roles up so that parents can be more involved in the kind of the almost political side of running a school, if you like, as opposed to just the kind of events managing. So those are the different opportunities for parental involvement. But how can we kind of commit as school leaders to a culture of listening to parents and family voice? Well, I think it's all about the calendar really and booking it in as ever. So obviously a yearly annual general meeting, which allows all families to be welcomed into the school, to be to hear who the parent council are, who the parent teacher association is, how they can get involved, and having that be a really key event in the school calendar. Maybe it's linked to a parents' evening, maybe it's linked to another event, maybe it isn't. However, it's going to work best in your community, but making sure that there is something there that happens every year that is specifically around parent engagement. And having that family engagement strategy absolutely nailed down in your senior leadership team. Maybe one whole meeting is devoted to this. Maybe it's something that you set out right at the beginning, but senior leadership team need to have a very clear policy on family engagement and who is in charge of that strategy. So then termly, it should be, again, an agenda item on your senior leadership team who is on that strategy and giving some updates. Maybe it's more often than termly, but certainly it needs to be at least termly. And then those surveys or one-to-ones with families so that you can hear their views. Again, as a minimum, doing that termly. There's a kind of survey fatigue, definitely, if you send things out too often, but you definitely want to be getting the views of families on a regular basis. Family council, town hall, for example, would be something to hold regularly, and some sort of community celebration event. Now, they don't need to be different things, they can all be combined into one for sort of efficiency, but it may be that you have those as separate events. And then weekly, so most schools have coffee mornings, some have an SLT drop-in. I know certainly for me that being part of the SLT drop-in at Dixon's was something that led me to meeting some really fantastic parents who ended up running some support groups for some of our students. So you never know what's going to happen in those SLT drop-ins, and that they're a really great way to get to know your family. And I know we've just had a whole session on the dangers of social media, but it can also be a wonderful form of communication with your families. So thinking about how you can be using that on a regular basis to get information out to your families. And finally then, how can we be committing to a culture of co-production? Well, your colleagues who run the community thread will be aware of co-production and seen some much more detailed information around this. But just very briefly, I really like this diagram that sort of exemplifies the idea of co-production. So coordination is having a space, maybe in your parental engagement program, and you just make things work by putting them together, but you've got an idea in your head as the person who's got a strategy of how this is all going to fit together. Whereas cooperation is two people kind of coming together, so maybe a family member and someone from the school, someone who's willing to give help, someone who's willing to receive help. And that's a kind of cooperative approach. Whereas a co-production approach is more two people coming together to decide what it is that they want to create. And it means that it's a very different kind of conversation. Now, obviously, this isn't always going to be appropriate, but the more that you can get it towards this kind of co-production with families, the more likely you are to get buy-in to the various things that you want them to be doing, but also you're going to find out about what it is they actually want and meet them where they are. So where possible, we would definitely advocate a co-production mentality when it comes to working with families. So just as an example, maybe you would say in the first example here, the coordination, maybe you would say there's a session on wellbeing next Thursday at 3, I think you should attend. Whereas these are the phrases that you might hear if you were moving towards a co-production mentality. So I'd love to hear how you currently involve families in key decisions in your school. Thanks very much.